When this man arrived at the wedding, everyone was stunned. However, the moment he took the microphone, they were left in awe. John, 40-something years old, was a homeless man who could only recall waking up in a hospital about 5 years prior to the interview. He couldn't remember his name, but since the people at the hospital called him John, he decided that was his name. They informed him in the hospital that he was found on the side of a road, barely alive. It looked like he had been thrown from a car that crashed and burned at the bottom of a cliff. Unfortunately, everyone else in the vehicle, other men whose connection to John was not known, had died. The doctors determined that he had suffered from amnesia due to the accident. They felt that his memory loss was temporary and he would one day regain it. However, they were unable to trace his family since he carried no ID. Once he was well enough to leave, they released him, hoping that he was able to find his way home. But John didn't head home. He didn't know which direction home was in. On his first day out, he sat at a bus station for several hours, uncertain of which way to go. When the last bus came along, he got on and then off at the last stop. There, while walking the streets, he encountered Ray. Ray asked him if he needed a place to sleep. After he replied that he did, Ray took him to a homeless center near the bus station. He was surprised to find a cluster of tents there and welcomed with open arms. People asked him many questions, but he had no answers, and yet they gave him a place to sleep. In time, John got used to the life on the streets. Ray taught him how to survive and get everything he needed, and John adjusted to this life. But one question kept nagging him. What was my life like before the accident? The answers never came. There was one thing that John did remember: a song. He didn't know where he heard the song, but it soothed him to sing it. Every night at the homeless hub, he'd sing this song. Hence, he was christened John the Singer. If there was any night someone needed some form of entertainment, they'd call him up. Though over time, his constant repetition of that one song did wear thin. One day, while out scrounging for food with Ray, they passed a spot where loud music was playing. John paused and listened. The next thing he knew, he was crooning softly. The words came without fuss, unleashing a wellspring of recall and delight. From then on, John went back to that spot every day and listened to the music. Although he didn't know most of the words, he quickly learned new songs. Soon, he began singing at the shelter and entertaining his friends. "Hey man," one friend told him, "you can make money doing that." Everybody pushed him to do it, and John started asking $1 for requests. He soon realized he could play the guitar, and after saving up, he bought one. John the Singer became a familiar face in the area. He sat on sidewalks with a sign around his neck that read, "Make your song request, and I'll grant your wishes for $1." Despite his newfound income, John remained selfless, bringing his earnings back to the shelter to share with others. John was apparently happy with his new life, but the question about what he had done in the past persisted. On the other side of the country, a couple was getting ready for their wedding. Ryan and May had left nothing to chance in making it perfect. They had delayed their ceremony for years, determined to have their fairy tale wedding. Designer outfits were chosen and a destination venue was booked, fulfilling their dream. But the closer it got to the big day, May started to feel really sad. She had always imagined her father walking her down the aisle, and he wasn't here to celebrate this special occasion with her. Her brother tried to reassure her that he could step in, but it was not the same. 2 days prior to the wedding, the couple arrived at their destination to put the finishing touches in order. That evening, disaster struck. An email from the band that was scheduled to perform. Their flight had been delayed, and they wouldn't make it in time. This made May so sad to think that her perfect wedding was going to be ruined. A friend suggested a DJ, but none were available. Another friend then brought up the idea of making a playlist of wedding-type songs on a phone and playing them through speakers. Reluctantly, May did this, though it really crushed her spirit. As for the music, he decided on a solution, and he and his friends went into town that evening to celebrate his bachelor's day. On the way, they passed a homeless man singing to a small crowd. His voice was stunning, and Ryan had just that spark he needed as motivation. Approaching the man, Ryan asked him to sing a wedding song. After handing him $1, the man's rich, melodious voice filled the air. Enthralled, Ryan invited him to perform at the wedding the next day. The man, who introduced himself as John, agreed. The next morning, the groomsmen went to fetch John from his usual spot. John had indeed tried to dress up, but his clothes were worn out and unkempt. Having foreseen such a situation, the groomsmen brought him a clean outfit. Even with the somewhat scruffy beard, now trimmed, and long hair, he looked at least decent. They instructed John to wait backstage until it was time for the bride and groom's first dance at the reception. Ryan had told May that he had a surprise for her, but she couldn't fathom what it might be. When it was time, May saw a man with a guitar walk into the stage. His unkempt look confused her and left many of her guests uneasy. Whispers circulated in the room as one wondered who this shabby-looking man was. But before May could get disappointment well up again, John started singing. Pure and soulful, his voice silenced the crowd and wowed the room with amazement. His voice was enchanting. May was caught up in surprise and joy, and for Ryan, everything couldn't have been more right for that moment. Curious and interested, May kept asking Ryan where he found such a mysterious singer. Ryan only smiled and said, "Don't worry, my love. Let's just enjoy our wedding party." After John finished his first song, the guests clamored for more. The next song that came to his mind was the one he had always sung at the shelter, the melody that had been his only link to his past. As he began to sing, the bride suddenly froze mid-dance. Her eyes locked onto the homeless man on stage, and in a trembling voice she said, "Dad." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. The song John was singing was one May's father had written, one they had sung so many times together when she was younger. May began to step closer, recognition fluttering in her teary gaze. Then, as it finally sunk in, forward she flew, embracing him in uncontrollable sobs. Joining her on the stage were her mother and brother, their faces a mix of disbelief and hope. Still, they had to be sure of what May had said. As they scanned John's face, the truth hit them like bricks. They enclosed him in one embracing hug after the other. Flashes of their faces began to consequently haunt his mind, which had been buried deep in his broken memory, together with his wife and children. The sight of his wife and children had him spiraling into a cascade of emotions. Pieces of his lost life began falling into place. Ryan just watched the emotional reunion in shock, yet he was deeply moved. In that instant, he knew he made absolutely the right decision in inviting John to their wedding. It was that John's actual name was Jake. He had been in a band, and some years ago they had moderate success touring around. For that particular year he went missing. His band had been invited to one of the most significant events out of state. In order to save on costs, Jake and the other band members opted to drive. Tragically, this trip ended in disaster. Their car veered off the road and crashed at the bottom of some cliff. Jake was a sole survivor, but without any ID, he had suffered severe memory loss. He could not find his way back to his family, who had given him up for dead along with his bandmates. Now reunited, Jake couldn't fathom that he still had a family waiting for him. His memories took some time to come back fully, but with each passing day with his loved ones, the pieces fell into place. Getting his old life back didn't prevent Jake, who still kept the name John, from staying in contact with his friends at the shelter. He visited them regularly, bringing gifts and food as a token of appreciation. He continued sharing his gift of music, performing at numerous events, and bringing joy into other people's lives. More importantly, he created new memories with his daughter, wife, and the rest of his family, proof that sometimes life's most unexpected turns can be a beautiful reunion. What do you think about John's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.